I don't know logistically how effective it would be to allow freight trains to use metro lines. I don't know. I guess it's
not, which means they have to rebuild it. That's the point. You're right. It's not. You are correct. It is not logistic. It's not feasible right now at all. They would have to rebuild it, which would give us an entirely rebuilt system. That's the point. You're totally correct. You can't just take freight trains and put them on the subway lines. That's true. So we'd have to rebuild the entire thing. And that's the way of rebuilding the system without having to tax people. That's the whole point, right? I'm with you on that.
Who would pay for that then?
They would. That's it. Like when you're doing a commercial build out, right? If I want to, if I want to rent out three floors on a commercial building in New York City because I want to bring my company there. Okay, well, they give me 6 months to a year to build it out. They don't charge me rent for that time, but I build it out. I spend it, and I don't, give me 6 months rent. I spend it. Boom. Now I start paying rent on the building once I build it out. Same thing here. Now, why do you do that? Because it encourages the people to build it quickly because they have to stop paying rent on it without using it. So it encourages a quick growth and quick building so that they can go ahead and use it. You might go, well, Larry, they'll make it shoddy. If they make it shoddy, their own trains are trashed. So they're not going to make it shoddy because it will hurt them. So they'll obviously make it well enough for their own trains to get by. And
it just seems like that would be an enormous upfront investment, though, right? I mean, when they could go build in Houston or Austin or in Nashville or 100%. A city that's not as densely choked, I don't know if any corporation would ever be able to front that cost. I mean, back during the late 1800s and early 1900s, I know that America was trying to expand its electrical infrastructure westward, connecting the power lines and what have you, because the West didn't have it and the East did. And initially, corporations were the ones supposed to do that because they ran the power lines, but they weren't doing it because even the relatively meager cost of expanding that infrastructure westward wasn't worthwhile, even if it could mean connecting millions of new people to power lines that they could then charge. The government had to force them to do it. So if corporations are too short-sighted to engage in the investments necessary to connect electrically the states, I'm not entirely sure if they would be willing to invest however millions it would take to chip in for
it would take billions
an infrastructural upgrade.
Yeah, it would take billions. I mean, it would take billions. It would literally take billions. But these are companies I'm talking about that are literally dropping billions of dollars with a B, billions of dollars in marketing every year already. For 3 companies, say, for example, FedEx, I'm making these up. I don't have the details of this, but say FedEx and Amazon and Google, as an example, to each chip in $1 billion. They would easily do it if they believe they could keep the leasing rights on it.
Well, that's
for
marketing
about 10
that
years.
they get money for it. I mean, they spend billions on marketing because it pays back in the products and services other people purchase.
Correct.
But the ability to physically, billions spent on a piece of infrastructure they don't own just so they can get better access to one part of one city. I don't know if that scales as well. I don't know if that would be as good of an investment on their part.
Oh, does it scale outside of New York City? Not as well. I agree. New York City is a 16 million metro person area. I mean, New York City, the metro area of New York City has more people in it than most countries, right? New York City has more people in it than about 40 states. So yeah, for New York City, it works well. That was my plan. It was specifically for New York City. You're right. In smaller cities, it probably wouldn't work. But would you want to have access to 16 million, people? Would you want to have access to a city where prior to COVID, literally 4 million people use the MTA system? Yeah, you would. And not just that, would you want to have access to a system that gets mentioned on newspapers and radio and TV multiple times a day during rush hour? Yeah, you would. And the only reason why I know this is when I spoke about it, I already had bankers asking me about financing.